Hi, this is Ed, and coming to you from Washington, D.C., and we'll be right back with our show. Okay, we're back, and I'm in Washington, D.C. for the first time broadcasting from the nation's capital, and we're here with Stephen Howard, who's, again, high up in Mexico City. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Ed. Good to see you.
You know, I try to wear the same thing every day, so
There
it looks consistent. But not tomorrow. It's going to be different.
you
So,
go.
Stephen, you're the author of 22 books now, and the most recent one, Humany, has won awards and acclaim from people in business and in groups and psychologists and PhDs. And what do you think is the reason for that? From your words, I have to ask you that prompt.
Well, I'd like to think it's because I'm a good writer, but I think more than that, I think it's the thought. I've brought some new thinking to the concept of leadership and my views on how leadership is changing coming out of the pandemic, how it changed during the pandemic, but more importantly, the changes that people need to make, particularly their mindsets about leadership. So it's a message that is resonating within corporations, within universities, within the nonprofit sectors. And so, yeah, I'm very pleased about it.
So your tagline is nobody wakes up wanting to be managed that day.
Yeah, no one may, that the concept of managing people, and which worked very well for people like me in the 1980s and the 1990s when I was a manager and a leader. That doesn't work with today's workforce and the ethos of people. We're hiring people for their brains more so than for their hands and legs, as we were doing in the 70s and 80s. So yeah, no one wakes up and wants to be managed, and certainly no one wakes up and says, "I can't wait to be micromanaged by my boss today." So leaders have to change their mindset, and that the key mindset to me is that you don't manage people, you manage things, you manage projects, processes, policies, procedures, but you lead people. And that is a mindset change. And yeah, look, there are times you have to manage somebody, particularly if it's, really bad behavior or really poor performance. But if you have that manager hat on about 20% of the time or 15% of the time, then you're in the right direction. But if you're managing people 80%, 90% of the time, I think you're going to lead to employee burnout and huge levels of employee attrition, which is not good for anybody.
So the great employee shakeout happened because of COVID, and it just coincided with COVID, but it was probably going to happen anyway eventually.
I think it was, and I think COVID, probably speeded it up a little bit, kind of put it into afterburners, if you want. But yeah, I think people were already realizing that people were already leaving, and we've known for decades now that people leave bosses. They don't leave companies. They quit because of their direct supervisor, their direct boss. But I think what we saw COVID did was people reevaluating just what role does the work play in their lives and their identity. Am I an engineer? Am I an IBM engineer? Am I an IBM person? Or am I a human being who happens to be an engineer at IBM, but I also have other responsibilities outside my role at IBM? So I think people reevaluated that during COVID, and leaders going to have to change their mindsets to be sustainable in their success.
So I know you're not a comp and ben expert, but it's a leadership thing that I'm thinking about at this moment, about the monetization of skills.
Mhm.
Okay, I've got skills. I want to get 100,000 from you or I'd quit. I'm going to go to your competitor. So that's dangerous talk. The boss may just say, get out.
They
Or
may.
he says, well, just what do you have in mind? It might be an interesting throwback. What do you think of that?
I think that's been going on for forever, quite frankly. But I think what has changed is that the war for talent is over and talent has won. And so the employee now has a little bit more leverage in particularly in certain industries. I mean, you know, the people getting laid off in Silicon Valley, from what I'm reading, are being rehired within 4 to 6 weeks by other organizations. So that, just because like Google lays off 12,000 people, it's not the end of the world because those, majority of those are finding new jobs fairly quickly. So I think that's one aspect to it. I think the other aspect is, and again, this is where I think the employee mindset has changed. Now the leadership mindset has changed. And here's what I mean by that, Ed. If you were paying me $100,000 at say I would work for you at a Wall Street bank, you're paying me $100,000 a year. And I moved to Colorado, and I was doing that work from home or work from remote in New York City. But now I moved to Colorado, and I've seen companies that want to lower my pay because they say, well, now you're in Colorado, your costs are not as high. Well, you're not paying me based on my living costs. You're paying me on the value I provide to you as an employee. So if my value was $100,000 in Manhattan, if I move to Colorado Springs, my value is still $100,000. It doesn't matter that I've reduced my income. And I've seen so many organizations try to change their compensation based on where the people are working from rather than the value they're providing the organization. And that's going to backfire in organizations.
Let's change the topic a little bit to this business of feedback and delegation of responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And um, delegation has been around forever, so rather, well, what's the difference between delegation and micromanagement from your view?
Well, when sometimes I think when people delegate, they tend to micromanage because they become afraid that I've delegated to you to do something, and now I'm afraid how well you're going to perform. So now I'm constantly checking. Ed, how's that project going? How's it going? I'm every day I'm over your shoulder. Where are you today on this? And that's just going to drive people nuts. I think the real thing. Yes, delegation's been around for a long time, but what people haven't understood is that there's a difference between delegation and, say, assigning a task to somebody. So assigning a task is, something comes in and I need somebody on my team to perform a task. I will assign it to an individual. Delegation, the true definition of delegation is I'm doing something, but I need to free up my time. I'm the department manager. I delegate a task that I am usually doing or would normally do to somebody else. So the purpose of delegation, the one purpose is to free up time for me as the leader so that I can go do more value-added tasks for the company. The other purpose of delegation is to help develop somebody. So yes, I know how to do this, but I need to develop you, Ed. So I'm going to delegate something to you, and maybe part of the project, maybe all the project. But this is because I want you to develop certain skills. Plus, it's going to free up down the road time for me to do more value-added work for the company.
So have you written a book about delegation?
I've written it, first draft, editing it in February, and I plan on publishing it by the end of February. So I'm kind of giving myself a 1 month deadline. So yeah, I've written it, but no one's read it yet.
So I was wondering because I wanted to think about how to frame that question to you. So what that leads me to think about, though, does Harvard Business School have a class in how to delegate and not be afraid to delegate?
I'm not sure, quite honestly. I honestly don't know. They should, not just Harvard, but anybody else who's teaching leadership skills and programs. And the thing is, it is a skill. It is a process, and there are things, and that's what I explain in the book that's coming out, is how not to be fear or anxious about delegation. And the other thing is, when we talk about we want to develop people, traditionally we've always focused on we want to develop their skills, we want to develop their competency, we want to develop their capability. One new wrinkle that I've brought into it with this new book and some new thinking I've done about this is that really the other thing we want to do is build people's confidence. Because the more confident our team members are, then they're going to be more productive. They're not going to be coming to us as leaders with every little question or every little approval for something. Can I do this? Is it okay if I do this? So that's an area that I don't think we put enough focus on traditionally as leadership coaches, leadership mentors, or leadership trainers, quite frankly, is how do we build confidence in the people who report to us?
So therefore, I'm hearing that knowing how to delegate is a great skill for building effective teamwork and um, setting up a feedback system, because you're delegating something to me, you're going to want to know how it is. How's it going? And so it stands to reason that the person doing the delegating is like a football coach directing our offensive coordinator,
Mhm.
director of how the play is going to work. I'm assigning this task to you to be Kelsey, the tight end, and run to the left and then zigzag over to the right. And if you meet opposition, kill them. I'll just jump over their head, but do it. And then we'll make that play and get us to where we need to be in order to go to the next play, the next step down the field. So I would think that the football coaches who don't know how to do that get fired, like those guys at the Chargers recently.
Yeah.
They just had the ownership had enough. Just get rid of the whole team because they weren't doing that.
They
And,
weren't
and
doing,
right.
and also, I mean, just to change sports a little bit, we've seen a head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks who had the second best record in the NBA this season be relieved of his duties because he had lost the team. The team wasn't listening to him anymore. And I don't think apparently, I don't know, but apparently he wasn't listening to them either. So this is all part of what I mean about the leadership mindset. I mean, he may have had that old approach, that command and control approach to leading his basketball team, but the young players today, they don't want that. They want to be mentored. They want to be coached. They want to be developed, not just told what to do. And so it kind of goes back to your almost original question here, comment, Ed, is also is that when you delegate, one of the things I teach and one of the key points of the book is going to be when you delegate, you should set and tell the person when you're going to review progress. And that progress should either be based on a timeline, like, okay, every Thursday morning at 10:15, let's have a 15-minute conversation and let's see how things are progressing. Or it should be based on a deadline, a milestone. So let's say it's you're writing a strategy paper. Okay, when your first draft is ready, let's sit down and review that. When the second draft is ready, we'll do it on that milestone. 3 weeks before the project's due, we're going to review the final document, that sort of. So it's based on deliverables, based on milestones. And here's why this is important. If you don't do that as a leader up front and set when those review status conversations will be held, then what happens is, oh, this conversation ends early. I've got 10 extra minutes. I'm going to call so and so and see how they're progressing. And that feels like micromanaging to the other person. You catch them unaware. They're not working on just one project. They're probably working on 3, 4, 5 different things. Maybe today they're working on project 2, and you call up about project 1, and now their mind, they've got to stop and think, and then they start thinking, oh my gosh, my boss doesn't trust me, or my boss is losing faith in me. Why is he calling me, or why is she calling me now about this project when I'm working on something else today? So they're not prepared for the conversation. They're nervous. they don't do a good job of telling the leader what the progress is. Now the leader starts to lose faith in them. It's a vicious cycle. It all goes spirals downstream really bad. So one of the key points I make to people when I coach them, or now is in the book as well, is that set those review discussion dates in advance, either based on time, like once a week, every 2 weeks, whatever works, depends on the project, the task, or based on a certain milestone, so that they both of you know when you're going to have that conversation.
And how to respond,
Yeah,
how to
yeah,
communicate it back.
yeah, and also what we're going to review, and then for the employee is prepared for the conversation.
So they don't teach that in Harvard or some of them,
Not
just
that
in
I've ever heard of.
just,
I've never, you know,
just in Stephen's education course.
hopefully.
But they should. It sounds like it's a no-brainer.
Well, I'm going to send this recording to Harvard, and when the book comes out, maybe they'll put the book in their school library or in their course.
So let's continue down this road of analogy with, say, football or any sports, and it's the coach, like this guy, the Kansas City Chiefs coach, big fat guy.
Yeah, Andy Reid.
Yeah, always in red. Um, he doesn't tell Mahomes what to do, or does he? I mean, a quarterback has to execute. He's like you're Andy Reeves and I'm Mahomes in this analogy, and you're not telling me how to throw the ball or at what speed or at what level or whatever, You're just telling me to, I mean, you can't wing it, although sometimes that happens. But
Well,
there's a plan.
that's why they got that big card in front of them those cards are based on situations. If it's 3rd and 3, here's our 3 or 4 key plays we want to run. If it's 3rd and 10, there's another type of play we want to run. If it's 3rd and 17, then there may only be a couple choices that they want to consider. And that's the reason for a coach, because when you're in the heat of the moment, particularly in sports, um, you're out there judging what's happening, keeping yourself under control, whatever. And you can't step back and look at the bigger picture and think about, oh, okay, do we do this play or this play? What's our clock management strategy? What's our, who just got hurt? We got a substitute player in, or maybe the other team, one of their cornerbacks is just, gone down and gone off the field, and they've got their second stringer in. Do we target that person suddenly because, they're not as good as the person they replaced? All kinds of, that's the coach's jobs for, is have that bigger picture. That's what a leader's job is for. A leader's not to be down in the weeds. But that's the problem with delegation. To bring this back to what you talked about, Ed, is that one of the reasons people are afraid to delegate is they know they can do it better. And sometimes leaders are afraid to delegate because if I delegate it to you and it's going to take you 6 hours and I can do it in 2, sometimes that's a false assumption that, oh, I'll just get it done in 2. That's more productive. But no, my time is more valuable to the company. Hopefully, if I'm the leader, hopefully I'm spending more strategic cognitive thinking. So yeah, better give it to you and let you spend 6 hours on it so I can spend those 2 hours doing something more strategic for the organization, or mentoring people or coaching people, rather than being in the weeds and doing a task and getting it done. But that people don't like to delegate because sometimes they think, well, I can do it faster. I can do it better. Yeah, better, but can the other person do it up to a acceptable quality level? And if so, delegate.
So this is a management skill. Is
Mhm.
it an HR skill? No, it's a little bit of everything, isn't it?
Well, it's a leadership skill, and yes, HR people are leaders, so it's something that HR people need to be able to do, um, but do it right, do it effectively. And unfortunately, too many people, when they delegate, they one of the mistakes people make is they abandon the other person. They said, "Okay, Ed, you're going to do this project. Are you comfortable? You're confident? Everything's okay? All right, good, Ed. Go do a good job. Call me if you have any questions." Or if you hit any hurdles, call me. And then we abandon you. And then now, typically, an employee is unwilling and reluctant to come to their boss and say, I hit a hurdle. I need your help. So they plow on, they continue to try it to the best of their ability, but then they make mistakes, it goes wrong. And then this is why people fear delegation, because Ed, if I delegate to you and you make a screw up, yes, you're responsible for it, but as your leader, I'm accountable for it. And that fear of, wow, oh my gosh, what if I delegate to that person and they mess up? I'm going to be held accountable. I'm going to look bad in front of my boss. So maybe I better off I just do it myself. And that's how leaders burn themselves out. And that's how leaders don't get the productivity that they want.
So, how many chapters will this book have?
This is going to be a tips and techniques book. And it's going to be 85, 90 pages. Maybe in terms of chapters, it's 5 or 6, but very short chapters, obviously. So yeah, no, this is not the typical book that I've written in the past. So I'm coming out with 3 of these simultaneously in February. One on feedback, one on delegation, and one about communicating as a leader. So they all tie in close to one another, but they're different skills and different scenarios that I go through in each of the 3 books.
Well, I can't wait to have you on the Global TV talk show to not only just plug them, but describe what it's all about.
Oh, thank you. These are what I'm finding. These are the things, basically, these books and like our conversation today are answering the questions that people come to me either in my coaching sessions or when I'm, doing a leadership course program at a major organization. These are the questions that the individuals come up to me and say, "Hey, can you help me out here? I've got this situation, or I'm not comfortable about this. How do I become comfortable?" So these are the type of things that have come up over the last 15 years. I've trained and coached over 11,000 people in my life. So, I'm just taking all these kind of situations and questions that people come to me individually and trying to put them into a book that helps more people.
Fascinating. Well, I wanted to bring this to a close in just a couple of minutes, respectful of your time and the audience time out there. And you're going to be speaking tomorrow, that's Feb 1, at my Global Trade, Global Business Talent Conference, in person and virtual, being broadcast live from Washington, D.C., where I'm at right now, inside the global law firm of Mayer Brown in their K Street offices. We have people in the room live and a whole group of virtual speakers from Dublin and from Hamburg and from Portugal, as well as from around the US, and including you. You'll be in Mexico City. So I thank you very much for all your attention and devotion to Global TV Talk Show. As we sum up in the next minute or two, Stephen, the role of delegation in government, I would imagine, is very different than within a business setting, because the person doing the delegating, let's just say President Biden for a second, and this is not political, this is just structural talk. He's got the whatever his title is, Mayorkas, Department of the Interior, I think, and the Republicans are after him. The enemy is after Biden, and they pick on this guy because he's vulnerable and with the southern border situation as it currently is. And now it's getting really vicious. So, but he's actually delegating. This guy didn't come up with the decisions. The president did. So so as a leader, as a manager, how can a leader uh, ensure or do better to help defend or help assist or help prevent the person being delegated to a task which is huge and very important, and maybe without rules,
Mhm.
what mistake is being made from a point of view of delegation?
I suspect that it's what we just talked a little bit about is that accountability factor. The president is still accountable for the decisions that the Department of Interior is making to execute whatever that delegated strategy is. Now, whether they came up with it, or the president came up with it, I honestly don't know. But anyway, they're going forth with a strategy. And that's the same as the corporate world in many regards. I mean, yeah, I think part of it is, and this is not a reflection just on the current administration, but I would advocate it's a reflection on past 4 or 5 or 6 administrations, is we don't have leaders who have the attitude of Harry Truman, who basically says the buck stops here. I'm the president. I'm accountable. You want to throw darts? Throw them at me. And I think Ronald Reagan had a great philosophy as the president. He said, one of the best after I'm going to paraphrase this because I can't remember it exact, but he said something along the lines of, to be a strong leader, you get good people, put a good strategy together, and then you get out of their way. So that's where that micromanaging thing comes. Ronald Reagan was not a micromanager, and so I think between the mindset of Harry Truman and the mindset of Ronald Reagan, we need to do some maybe chip implants from our friend Elon Musk into our political leaders around the world, not just the United States. But there are some leadership attributes that we are solely lacking in our leaders around the world, particularly in government.
Interesting.
That's my soapbox stand, I guess, on it, if you will.
So finally, I noticed that Caliente Press is publishing a book for someone else,
Oh,
or has been retained to publish a book. Is this the first time, or have you
oh
been?
no. No. We have your good friend Mark Colo. We helped Mark publish his book. I published. I've got a couple authors in Texas, a married couple, and then another individual who have published books. So the Caliente Press is kind of a sideline business for me. It's I only take on 3 or 4 clients a year to help them publish nonfiction books only, working through a process that I have. So this is a lady that was introduced to me by one of your guests, Ileana Ferber out of Houston. She introduced me to this lady in Suriname. And I've spent the last 6 months with her, helping her pull together a book, editing it. English is her second or third language, so she needed quite a bit of editing help and then pulling it together from a production standpoint, working with her graphic artist in Suriname to do really a beautiful cover, quite honestly. And yeah, the book launched last Friday on Amazon, and she launched it at an event in Suriname on Saturday. So yeah, another new author I brought to the ranks.
And I've got a question. Where is Suriname?
Suriname is South America. My geography is not that good about that part of the world, but it's near the Venezuelan Guyana area. It's got some oil wealth now, so people are going to start learning where it is as they've discovered some oil in both onshore and offshore there. So yeah, so it's a former Dutch colony. So I think the kind of the Dutch language or their own language is probably their first or second language. English is their third.
Fascinating. Again, thank you for being on Global TV Talk Show.
My
And
pleasure.
Humany, HUMONY, leadership.com is where the answers are.
Well, thank you very much, and I look forward to participating in your big Washington, D.C. event tomorrow.
Great.
Look
Thank you,
forward to it.
Stephen. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Come back again.
I will.